Hello, everyone. Good morning, or afternoon, or evening, depending where you are joining us today from. I want to welcome you all today to our webinar on the topic Optimizing for Page Load Speed, challenges and strategies to improve SEO, user engagement, and conversion rates. My name is Amit Boutin, and I'm a product manager at Easy Systems. Easy Systems is the company behind Easy Publish and today Easy Platform. Easy Platform is an open source content management system based on the Symfony full stack framework. With Easy Platform, developers have the capability to develop various types of websites and apps with relative ease, while editors have the tools to create, deliver, and optimize content as they build digital experiences for customers. Easy Systems has over 18 years of experience in the publishing, finance, and e-commerce domains. Before we get started, I want to quickly also go over a few housekeeping items. All the participants have been muted in order to avoid any background noise. We also encourage you to submit any questions or comments via the Zoom chat box that you may have, and we will address them at the end during our Q&A session. At the end of the webinar, we will send all registrants of the webinar a follow-up email with the webinar recording, as well as links to the various solutions that will be presented here today. And with that, I'm happy to introduce you all to our speakers today. Our first speaker is Sanjay Sarathy. He is a Vice President of Marketing in Cloudinary. He has years of experience working with both developer and marketing communities across a broad spectrum of SaaS and enterprise software technologies. Our second speaker is Sébastien Morel. Sébastien is the Chief Technical Officer at Novactive. Sébastien has worked at the web agency Novactive for the past 15 years. 3 years ago, he opened up the San Francisco offices. He's an expert with open source web and mobile technologies, managing high traffic websites, and many other challenging projects on various CMS frameworks. Now, to begin this discussion, I will pass it on to Sanjay. One sec. Sanjay, if you can please share your screen, I'll stop sharing mine.
Great. Thank you, Amit. And hopefully everybody here can see my screen. So I appreciate everyone's time. As Amit said, it's a highly relevant topic that we're discussing today around page load speed, and it's relevant to both developer and marketing communities. And one of the drivers for why this topic is so important is because media, and we use the term media to describe images, videos, other types of rich content, including even audio files, has become such an integral part of how we consume content today. And there is both user preference data as well as scientific data to show that end users engage with media far better than they engage with text. There is a source from Animoto, research from Animoto, which is a video company that highlights the fact that 4 times as many people prefer to watch videos than to read about it. And probably one of the most interesting data points that we've seen in recent times is that the human brain actually processes visual images about 60,000 times faster than processing text. So if you are trying as a company to engage with your users, media is a natural way to ensure that that happens. And in recent times, with companies having this knowledge, images and videos now make up 75% of websites. And the challenge that these companies face is that the average weight of these web pages has nearly doubled over the past 3 years. So if you just think about that for a moment, 3 years ago, which is not that far, which is not that long ago, a page could, with nothing else in place, assuming the same optimization techniques, assuming the same sorts of bandwidth, the same sorts of network in place, you would essentially have nearly twice the penalty in terms of how long those pages would take to load. And so this is integral, and this highlights a lot of the issues that are central to our webinar topic, which is related to page load speed. And there's an inherent challenge between what marketing teams and e-commerce teams and other business teams want to do around improving user engagement through media, and what oftentimes engineering and development teams need to do to optimize site performance. And so this raises a whole host of challenges for organizations, especially for the development community, that span a number of the topics that are listed here, and that I'll pass on to Sébastien in just a moment. But these include how people need to think about responsive sites and responsive sites across different viewports. To give a simple example, there are thousands of different in the Android ecosystem. There are literally thousands of different combinations of device size and CPU speed and sort of network conditions impacting how people on an Android phone can view the same image or the same video. And the ability to automate that has huge implications. Oftentimes you have to deal with different browser preferences. So some of you may be aware that Google with the Chrome browser has a preferred format for images that's WebP based. Internet Explorer via Microsoft has its set of preferred formats through JPEG-XR. And so again, as a company, understanding how to manage that, understanding whether you are willing to have hundreds of variants of images for different browsers, for different viewports, and automating this process is a huge challenge. And that's some of what we're going to discuss in depth today. So with that, I'd like to sort of turn it over to my sort of partner in crime here, Sébastien, who's going to discuss a number of the technical issues that we need to think about as organizations when thinking about how to optimize for page load speed.
All right. Hello, everybody.
To you now.
Thank you, Sanjay. Let me share my screen. Here we go. So I hope everybody can see my screen. So as Sanjay said, images and media globally are everywhere. They are bigger, heavier, and you need to manage them in a lot of different sizes. And those images and media, they're coming from different devices, and those devices are better and better at giving you, the media that you want in the best quality that you need. And then you are using those media to upload, and you upload them into your CMS or into your project as is, right? You don't want to use Photoshop by yourself before to create an article. So you would use those images and video and upload them as is, which became an issue because all those media takes a lot of storage. They are very heavy, and they will become an issue when you try to deliver them to your visitor. So if you look at the best people around that gives the best, the best practices as Google, you can see on this quote coming from developer.google.com that you have some keywords here like bytes, download, rendering, and optimization. What does that mean? What it is exactly? So they say that it's an art and it's science. We could also say that it's skills and knowledge. So we're going to look into that and see that in terms of performances and SEO, it's really important to know those best practices, to know the challenge, to deliver a better UX experience to your visitor and to make happy your marketing people. So what does that mean? That means that when you want to deliver a web page with images and a lot of media, you need to provide adapted version. You need to be able to convert and resize heavy files. Of course, you need to deliver them as fast as you can. And you may have heard about this term, responsive. So responsive means front-end mechanism to optimize the loading of the page. So those concepts can be split in two very different challenges. The first challenge is server side. What does that mean, server side? It means everything that happened before even you start to download the page. It's everything in the cloud, I will say. So server side, you need to deal with different components. So for instance, you need to handle HTTP requests. You need to manage your bandwidth. Of course, the less data exchange, the better it will be if you are on your phone trying to browse the website. Computation means, like, you know, when you are providing an image which is very big, you want to deliver it on a mobile phone, you can imagine that the server is going to try to reduce that image, maybe resize it, maybe optimize it. And to do that, it takes CPU and takes RAM. So the less computation you do, the better it is for you and for the speed of the page. Of course, you need a good storage with fast access, and you need to rely on this storage. So it's another concept. Then you have these delivery things, how to optimize the delivery of an image. If your website is stored, I don't know, in the US on the West Coast, and someone is visiting your website in Europe, you want the image to be as close as him to be downloaded as fast as possible. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, which is called delivery. And then you have also caches. So the concept of cache is simple at first, but you need a good expiration model or invalidation model to be able to provide up-to-date content to your visitor. You don't want them to see an old image or an old page. So that's everything you need to deal server side with on server side. Also, then you have this client side. Client side means it's on your computer. So the page is loaded, the page is generated server side, and then your browser, your Internet Explorer, Google Chrome or Firefox or Safari has downloaded the page, and now it needs to render it. And to do that, you have also some optimization and best practice to comply with, to make it fast and to make it better for your visitor. And so, which means rendering, image selection, parallel downloading, how to manage that, lazy loading. So we'll see some best practice about that. And again, cache, because on your computer, you can also cache things. If the image didn't change, maybe you want the user to keep it on locally. And all of that, it's called also responsive, how to make this page responsive in terms of image. So all those challenges are well known, and that's great because we can deal with it because we have a good best practice list. So I'm going to share what we're doing to achieve a good page load speed. So first, if we go back on the server side world, I will say you have seven subjects to be careful of. First, you need a software which is able to provide to your visitor multiple versions of an image. Multiple version means one version per context. So if the visitor is on his desktop, you want to provide a better quality image. And if he has an HD resolution screen, you want to give him a better quality image, even more better than a simple desktop. And if he's on mobile, of course, you want to reduce the size and adapt it. And the context could also be the context of the page. On a blog post, probably you want a small image on the list of the blog post, but you want the big size image when you are on the blog post itself. So you need to have a software that is able to do that. Then on the server side, you also need to be able to reduce that image. so which is called compression, meaning that, you know, as a human, you don't see all the details of an high quality image. So it is unnecessary to exchange those details between the server and the browser. So using tools like PNG Quant or JPEG Optim, you can reduce the size. So for you as a human, it won't make any difference, but maybe the size of the image would be reduced by 80% of the size, which is great. Also, you can strip all those metadata. You know, when you take a picture with your camera, a lot of information are stored into these pictures, and you don't need them to just display this image. So you can do that, and most of the software are able to do that. Then you have the usage of a CDN. I gave you this example earlier. If your server are the US and you want to deliver an image in Europe, you know, the image must travel 10,000 miles. Of course, you can use a CDN, which is a content delivery network, and those companies providing this service will replicate your image around the world, on the edge of the world, to improve the access of those images and video. So that's another thing to do, is use a CDN. Use cache as well. So usually if you have a CDN, you also have cache around it. But if you don't have a CDN, still you can try to make your own cache system, and same goes for the video as well. And lately, and it's pretty new, but if you didn't look at it yet, you should. You can also optimize that using HTTP2, which is going to optimize the way images and media are exchanged between the server and the browser, and you can gain a lot of speed using HTTP2. Client side, you need to be responsive. So you need to download only one and the correct adapted version of your media in this context for this browser and on this screen resolution. So it is what we call being kind of responsive. To do that, you have specific markup like source set, which basically is it is defining rules for your browser to try to download the correct version of the image depending on the current context, which is kind of logical because your browser knows itself. So it knows how to ask the server the good images. So please use src set to do responsive and to load images. Then you have the lazy loading. What it is, it's like when you load the page, you don't see everything at one glance, right? You see only what we call the fold. What is usually a good practice is to lazy load every images that are after the fold. This way, it's very fast to load the first glance, and then the image are going to be downloaded in the background, but your user will see the first, the first page loaded way faster. Then you have another very simple best practice is to remove images themselves. If you don't need an image, let's say you want a shadow to do a shadow on a box, you can use an image to do that, but it's much better not to do it because you have opportunity to do that with CSS and CSS3. So it's kind of obvious, but if you can avoid using an image, do it. One more is to use a vector image. That simplify a lot the server side tasks, because with HVG, because it's vector images, you don't need to resize, you don't need to convert or to compress. So that's great. One little tricks about that, if you use SVG, don't forget to minify them to save more bytes. And then Sanjay talked about it a little bit, but depending on the browser, images, you can select the correct type of images. So depending on what you want to do, it would be better to use a PNG or JPEG or GIF. It depends. And that you just need to look into what you want to do, the level of details. If you need animation, it would be a GIF, PNG if you want transparency and stuff like that. So that's very important to think about that. And again, leverage a cache layer, this time not the server-side cache, but the browser cache. So that's it for the best practice. So now, how easy comply about that? We like Easy Platform because you can do very good project and you can provide a really good experience for the developer, but also for the marketer. So how does it comply with it? First, in Easy, the CMS will store an original version and will keep it. Then, to render the page, it will use different variation of this image, where just by configuration, you can decide how to filter, how to resize, compress, strip, and you can also apply post-processor to reduce this size. Then, because it's based on a template mechanism, you can very well in a simple way, you can apply all the front-end best practices and all the responsiveness things to your pages without any hassle, because it's just the front-end development. And two more things, very important. Easy Platform provides you a file system abstraction, which allow you to store the images outside, like in AWS, Amazon Web Service, S3 bucket, for instance, or somewhere else. And the CDN integration is great too, because with Easy, you can purge or expire a content based on the publication. So if someone changes an article, you can ask the CDN to expire or to purge itself, which give to your user good and up-to-date content. Some KPIs, as you can see on this slide, it's for 2017, a page load between 1 and 3 seconds will increase the bounce of 32%, which is already crazy. So imagine if your page loads less, in 10 seconds, it's kind of 123% of bounce, which is not good for you as a marketer. Again, another one, the Verge Speed Index. So the best practice is under 3 seconds. So that's the time, of loading the page totally. If you look at the different industry, we are not there yet. But that's completely achievable with an Easy Platform project, and we are doing it every day. But as you can see, it's not yet standard. And also the average time to first byte, which is the server-side generation. The best practice provided by Google, it's 1 to 3 seconds. And as you can see in the industry, we are not there yet. But honestly, this one with a CDN and Varnish is a reverse proxy. You can reduce that to 500 milliseconds, for instance. That's completely achievable. So to conclude, all these best practices are skills. It's a knowledge to acquire. If you miss one step, that could have very bad consequences for performances, but also for SEO, because performances and SEO is very tight. So it's a gray zone between front-end, back-end, and DevOps. And if you look at it, in fact, image and media management, it is a microservices that everyone needs. That's why in the Easy community, you can find two great connectors to connect Easy Platform, the CMS, with a tool that is going to give you all the best practices that you need to deliver images the best way and way more. And that's where I'm going to send back the screen share to Sanjay, because he's going to show us more about Cloudinary and why it is simple and great to use it.
Thank you, Sébastien, and very much appreciated. And I just wanted to add to Sébastien's points around some of the KPIs. Sébastien talked a lot about some of the key best practices that are suggested for companies and sites, and what some of the KPIs are around page load speed. What I wanted to do was just highlight what is the business impact, right? If you were to spend time on optimizing your sites and spend time on understanding how to balance user engagement with website performance, what does that actually mean from a bottom line perspective? And what happens is that the effort that you put into some of the best practices that Sébastien outlined will impact every part of your customer acquisition process, a customer acquisition funnel, if you will, all the way from upfront from site abandonment. It impacts lower conversion rates. And you can see sort of the dichotomy between sites that actually load quote unquote quickly versus sites that don't. And it's a noticeable revenue impact for companies. And Sébastien alluded to the importance of SEO, and as a marketer myself, I spend a lot of time thinking about this. We spend a lot of time at Cloudinary thinking about it as well for our own products and our own capabilities. And as you may recall, you may have read as well, starting in July of this year, Google is now going to use mobile page speed as one of the factors in their mobile search ranking. So given the importance of mobile searches, given the importance of how companies interact with sites these days, which is more and more via their mobile phones, the ability to the importance of optimizing page load speeds on your for mobile devices is critical to keeping your SEO rankings up, which obviously impacts your customer acquisition process. As Sébastien mentioned, we've worked closely with Novactive and Easy Systems. We are essentially a media management platform that enables you to essentially take all of your rich media from images and videos and even audio files and more, and help the entire process of uploading them to manipulating them, transforming them, and automating a lot of the steps that Sébastien outlined. But one of the interesting tools that we released in conjunction with other products out there is a site that is publicly available, is free. It's called Website Speed Test. And it's an interesting way to go in and identify where there is opportunities to optimize images on your site. And you can type in any site, it's not just your own. But what's interesting out of this is that there are a number of sort of items, or the three sort of specific areas that this tool takes into account, but you should also take into account as you think about your own sort of best practices and your own strategies for doing this. One is related to sort of this notion of smart compression. How do you balance the image quality of any set of images or any one image versus the weight of that image? What is the trade-off that you want to make between user engagement and the ability to deliver that image more rapidly? Sébastien talked about this as well, which is what is the appropriate format in which to deliver that image based on knowing what browser that particular viewer is using to view your site, or if they're on their phone, to view off their mobile device. And then speaking of mobile delivery and mobile applications, given the number of other issues that mobile apps face when it comes to device size and bandwidth, network bandwidth, and CPUs, are there things that you can do to pre-process those media components before they're uploaded? And then obviously there's the post-processing once you upload them. And this is especially relevant if you have user-generated content, right? Social media sites or sites in which end users are delivering content that could be in a variety of different formats and different sizes and different image quality. How do you go about standardizing that as part of your application process? So with that, I just wanted to share with you very quickly a sort of an example of what this looks like So hopefully what you can see here is a screenshot, or not actually a screenshot, our application, our Cloudinary application. And I've just uploaded a picture of 2 guitars, and basically have this ability to then look at that image, and I can actually see how big that image is. And it's a pretty large image. It's about 400 KB in size. But what I can do is actually, let me just share the full thing so you can see that little screenshot there. And you can see that it's about 430 KB in size. And I'm going to implement a couple of the best practices that Sébastien talked about automatically to this image, and see what sort of impact that might have on the image weight itself. And so we have this ability, and we call it the ability to automatically identify essentially what the trade-off should be in terms of the quality of the image, in terms of the relative pixels that are generated, compared to how the human eye actually processes it, so that there's no visible degradation of the image, as well as automatically defining the format of the image, so that in case you are looking at it from with a particular viewport on a particular device using a particular browser, it renders it in a responsive fashion. And I can hit enter again, and you will see, and you should see, that there's no initial change in image quality. But when you look at the image properties again, you'll see that it didn't quite go down by a half, but it was close to a 45% reduction in size. Now, this was from a music site, as you can imagine, that sells music instruments. Multiply this by thousands of images that this one site has, and and even think about this in the context of videos, which are much heavier. You can immediately see that the trade-off that you're making between, it's automatically changed the file type to a WebP image, because I'm using Chrome as my browser, and it's closely and it's almost shortened the size by about by 50% or 40% or so. And the theme here is that you can do this on your own as well. Whether you choose to use Cloudinary or your own tools, you need to think about these best practices so that you're in the mindset of defining how you think about image quality, how you think about all the infrastructure items that make up page load speed. And then you can actually measure, once you do this, you can use Web Page Test, which is again an open source product that is out there, to actually see the differences in page load times for those repurposed images and those repurposed videos and other types of rich content that you have. With that, Sébastien, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything more to some of these best practices around images and videos, but I just wanted to share very quickly sort of how you would take a lot of what Sébastien talked about and sort of how you would see that in the real world.
Yeah, no, nothing to add on this particular point, but so you talk about the size, but what thing is great also with Cloudinary, for instance, sometimes on a website you need to render an image, like this one, it's more width than high. Mm-hmm. And sometimes on the website you want to display as a square, and it's really hard to resize it because this image is like longer than high. And with Cloudinary, you can definitely do something automatically, and Cloudinary automatically will crop the image based on the gravity and the content of the image, which is kind of great because you can provide a square image based on this kind of image, longer than high, and then adapt the image to your context and provide a better UX to your user. And the marketing people and the people who are creating the content, they don't have to open Photoshop. They don't have to grow up by themselves. It's automatic, like the face recognition that you have on this product, which is also kind of great to do this kind of thing.
Right, and as whether you're a marketer using Easy as your content management system, one of the advantages of using this sort of integrated platform that we have between Cloudinary and Easy, and using the integration work that Novactive did, is you can have one master image and deliver hundreds of variants automatically, as Sébastien mentioned, whether that's based on different sizes of the image, different formats, and do it dynamically on the fly and automate that entire process. And so it becomes it becomes fabulous, as I said, obviously from a developer perspective, but even more from a marketing perspective when you think about creative designers and marketers, that they can think about what's necessary for their particular site and their particular application without having to necessarily create hundreds of variants for each of the different types of images or videos that they want. And that's a huge value add. There was a question that came in, I think, related to this topic, which is, does the format change based on the browser the user request comes from? And the answer is yes. It'll automatically, the same guitar image that you see in front of you will basically automatically be displayed in a WebP format. If you're coming off a Chrome browser, or it'll display in a JPEG.XR format if you're off IE, or the original format if it's in some other browser. So you have this ability to support, again, these different preferences that browsers have based on the user request. So with that, Amit, I think I'll turn it back to you if you want to make any concluding remarks, and see if there are any other questions that have come in.
Yes, I'll just share my screen.
Yep.
Okay, so with that, we will open it up to any questions that people have, and I will read them out. If people can just make sure to ask the questions through the Q&A Zoom box, the question box, and not through the chat. So one of the questions that we have received, can you elaborate on how HTTP2 is used to optimize images?
Yes, I guess this question for me. In fact, HTTP2 is not used to optimize images by themselves. It's more about optimizing the loading of those images. So today, when you're using HTTP1 and you receive, and your brother receives a page, he has to download every images, every resources, and most of them are images probably, but he would do that, once at a time, or, he would download that in a parallel way, but not that great. With HTTP2, you open one connection and you can get the page and a bunch of different other resources. So you save a lot of time downloading those resources. And that is how HTTP2 is better for you and for your performance, because it reduces the latency and, useless exchange that you have in HTTP1. So it's not about just pressing the image or whatever, just optimizing the exchanges. Hope that answers the question.
Okay, another question that we received is, can you configure Easy to automatically apply custom binaries? Example, PNG quant or JPEG opt-in to images. I think this is for you, Sébastien.
Yep, and for me, yes, correct. You can definitely do that. In fact, in your configuration, when you describe the variation that you need, you can apply post-processor, and those post-processor needs to be defined in your configuration, and you can decide to apply them and to select the compression that you want, the optimization that you want, etc. And you can also chain them if you want. So yeah, yes, definitely you can do that with Easy Platform.
The next question that we have, is it possible to set up different buckets where, for example, a dev environment can have read-only access to production images, but full read-write permissions to a dev image bucket so that dev testing doesn't affect the production image bucket?
All right. So I would say that this question is a bit on the side of what we're talking about, but I think you can definitely do that with Easy Platform Cloud when you have an environment which is a clone of your production. So everything you do on production stay on production, and everything you do on dev will stay in dev. But maybe I didn't get quite well the question. Is it possible to set a different bucket where, for example,
I think, I mean, from a role-based perspective, you should be in position to, in some ways, it's almost like a digital asset management solution where you essentially provide role-based access to specific images. And so you could assign roles to specific users and give them specific types of privileges to buckets of images. So folders, for example, you may have a folder that's pre-production and you may have a folder that's post-production or something like that. And you can define roles to provide, it's something that, you know, we think about at Cloudinary as well, where we have essentially role-based access control to different components. And that's something that, you know, I think is fairly common in the world called digital asset management, where you do have where you have creative types, you have developers, you have editorial folks, and you may provide them with different capabilities to build out you know, how the workflow is, if you will, for the images and videos on that you've uploaded and stored.
Okay. The next question is, can we see that guitar image turned into a square format without cropping the guitars themselves? And can you extend the spotted background?
Yes, we can. I'm more than happy to set up a demo to show you different things. I mean, we can essentially, the process by which you would do this using what I should probably share my screen. Hopefully you can see it.
Not yet.
I'll stop sharing my screen.
Okay, sorry. Just make it out. But basically what you do, sorry, I've got multiple things open here. But basically what you would do is, using the same URL-based transformation, I could just as easily go into and make it something like, and this won't show it appreciably well, but you could make it a width height thing, and then it would show it. It's obviously not scaled to form, but you could easily do it, and then you could continue doing essentially transformations to this to ensure that it looked okay, right? And we can set up a demo to show you how to do that. But the point here is that you can automate the process of defining how each of those images looked and scale it to fit. So this won't actually do it, but you could scale it to fit like that, and it would show it in a slightly more, in a slightly better format. I'm not quite sure what you meant by extending the dotted background, but I'm more than happy to chat with you offline about that to understand what you're looking to accomplish. But that's entirely possible through the transformation capabilities of Cloudinary. And again, one of the things you can do, and the point around if you're a marketer, is you can take these images and easily extend them into the Easy Novactive system, the Easy Novactive integration into the Easy CMS system. So it's delivered in the format that your website wants it or your users want it. And so you have complete control and flexibility around sort of your images and video and other forms of content, which is a point that Sébastien was making, is that you have a lot of flexibility in terms of the different parameters you want to tune. You have to define what's relevant for your users and what's going to what in your mind is going to generate the best user engagement, and then have the system support that.
The next question we have, what are the most common expiration times for caching assets that you keep users updated with the latest content, but don't have them refreshing it too often?
I can pick this one. Yeah, in fact, I think you need to see assets. You have two kind of assets and two kind of images, at least for video. I think it's just one type of video, which is related to a content. So it would be what I call storage media. So it's all the storage that you have with your related to a content. And then you have the assets used for the design. So I don't know, the background of the header or something, related to the design. So to tackle the design issue, I think you need a versioning system. So every time you do a new deployment in production, you need all your assets to change of URL. That way the browser will think that it's a new asset and will try to download it. So basically you can use a very long expiration time on your asset when it's used for designs. Because every time you deploy, you provide a new version and the browser downloads it. For the storage, it's kind of the same. If your software, and if I take the example of Easy Platform, what it is doing, it's because with Easy Platform, every content has a versioning mechanism. Every time you publish a new image inside the content, the URL of this image will change. That way, you can also use very long TTL. It's called time to live. You can use very long TTL because you don't really care. You can cache that for a year if you want, because if someone changes it on your CML, the URL will change and the browser will download the new one. To answer this question, I would say that you can use long TTL because the expiration would be managed by the fact that the URL will change.
Another question that we have is, how do you account for mobile versus desktop performance issues? Are there different things to think about? And the follow-up to that is, are there different optimization issues when you think about videos versus images?
So I can jump into that. From the second question, videos and images, the same concepts around compression and sizing and automation of a lot of the things that Sébastien and I have talked about apply to images as they do with video. Obviously, there's some unique aspects around video related to, can you automate sort of the bitrate streaming so that people that are essentially viewing it off a slow network connection get different image quality than somebody looking at the video from a fast office network line. So those are some of the things that are additional on the video side, that and transcoding to the appropriate format in that are video specific are things that obviously are relevant for people that have video images. But the concepts are still very similar in that you still want to think about somebody had asked about, hey, can I take an image and create a square out of it? And you can do the same thing with videos. You can take a video and transform that into different sizes, different formats. But all of those concepts that Sébastien talked about are the same. In terms of the first question related to mobile, mobile devices, especially versus desktop, I think the additional factors there, obviously, that desktops don't have to think about, desktop environments don't have to deal with, are obviously network bandwidth. in terms of your carrier, in terms what carrier you use, in terms of the connection, in terms of and then the variety of devices and viewports in the mobile world is far greater than the variety in the desktop world. And so when you think about, again, what Sébastien discussed around responsive imagery for, the thousands of Android devices and other types of phones, then that becomes just more complicated. And you have to think through a little bit about what your end user environment is like and what the different types of variants that you may need to think about for people that access your site or application via mobile devices. And I'm separating here mobile access, mobile browser access versus native applications here. The other thing to think about as well on the mobile side is just a function of what not just responsive, but what you want to display, right? The other thing that's really interesting, one of the I've been talking with somebody around accessibility, right? It's one of the issues that crops up a lot when it comes to images and videos and how you display that on mobile devices versus desktop devices. So you need to think about accessibility with people that might be colorblind or have issues related to sort of visual impairment, and that has implications on how you define your image source sets and other things for mobile and desktop. So those are just some of the, just a lot of the issues that people need to think about when dealing with images and videos on mobile versus desktop as well. I don't know, Sébastien, if you want to add to that.
Yeah, I agree. And on my side, what we are doing usually, as we are making responsive websites, we're trying to optimize for mobile. That way, it's optimized for desktop because of the things that you just said, Sanjay. If you have optimized a website for the mobile, probably you have optimized it for the bandwidth and all that stuff, which is going to be a good asset for your desktop as well. So, yeah, no, I mean, I would not do any difference in terms of implementation between mobile and desktop. Just think mobile first, I would say.
Yeah, that's an excellent point.
Two last questions, and then we will need to wrap this up. What about the total weight of a page? Do you have KPI recommendations? And what about the number of resources in the page?
That's a very good.
Recommendations do you have for that?
So that is a very good question, and I have a slide about it. So I think I just put some slide from the Google article that I've read recently. So that's 2017. So that's a page weight. That's a recommendation from Google. So it should be less than 500 kilobytes. If you look at the standard, that's what you can see. I think it's really hard. I think it's hard to reach this best practice, but that's what Google advice. And in terms of request count, again, the best practice is to be under 50. Which I think is also very hard to reach because of the tags that you need, for tracking, image, CSN, and stuff. So that's the recommendation from Google. But so that's what you need to try to do. So if you are under this best practice, I think it's good.
Okay. So once again, I would like to thank our speakers, Sanjay and Sébastien, for joining us today and discussing this topic, optimizing for page load speed. Please be on the lookout. We will be sending out a follow-up email with the recording of the webinar and also with the contact information if you would like to reach out to to anyone from Easy or from the Cloudinary team or the Novactive with any questions, or if you would like to set up demos for one of the solutions. With that, I will bring the webinar to an end, and we'll send out that recording. Thank you very much for everyone who has joined us today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.